Well, we're here today, and nice that you guys all came here and listened to it. It's nice meeting you all as well. What I wanted to convey to you is the idea that I sort of discovered by accident was this idea of creating an etheric volume that you can then program to help get rid of the chemtrails or actually get rid of the door that's within that environment that's contained within that volume. And what I like to do is make this talk kind of informal. It basically is an interactive thing between myself and you guys. And probably the best way to do it is to first give you a story as to basically how I came across this thing, and then I would kind of clue you in as to the information that you can get from that story that I'm going to tell you is probably more useful than anything. It was in about 2001 that I built my first cloudbuster, and then of course the black helicopters were in the backyard, and what's going on, and you start digging into it. And my brother, I was in Raleigh, North Carolina at that time. That's where I lived. And I had a new house built there, and I was living up north in Raleigh. And I have a brother, Mark, and my name's Robert, by the way, in case you want to reference that. I have a brother, Mark, that lives in Erie, Pennsylvania. And Erie is noted for, Erie is right on Lake Erie. And it's noted for, it has a peninsula that sticks out into the lake. And it's noted for sunsets for eons. People would come there to that peninsula just to see the sunset. And my brother said he hasn't seen a sunset in years. And, this place was noted for it. And this was after I built my cloudbuster. I said, well, I have a solution for you. The cloudbuster. So I went up there and we built a cloudbuster. Sure enough, punched a hole in the sky, And then he got the black chopper visit. But what he noticed was that they would pound the skies. Just hundreds of planes would come. So he built another cloudbuster and we reinforced it, and then just pounded even harder. So he got the idea that, what if I just look at the trails, and he would look at the trails and he could actually, with his mind, eliminate them. As they were streaming out of the plane, he could just erase them. But after a while, he became overwhelmed. It seemed like it took the energy out of him. So he would call me up, and I'd give him a boost through a sucker punch, and he'd be good to go for another 10 minutes or so. So I said, well, I'm going to try this out. I wasn't really sure that he was actually blowing them away. So I tried one and said, yeah, I guess they go away when I look at them. So, but you really don't know. You don't really know for yourself if you're actually doing it. So there was one time I was watching a trail, and I saw a plane coming off in the distance, and I got on it, and I was blowing the trail away, and then the plane went behind a tree. So I said, well, wait till the plane comes out the other end, and then I'll continue blowing the trail away. So the plane comes out the other end of the tree, and I start blowing the trail away, and I said, I guess it worked. So I walked. My brother wanted to pick up something in the yard, so I went over to the other end of the yard. I looked behind a tree. The trail was still there. Where I took the tension off, the trail remained. When I put the tension back on, the trail eliminated. So then I knew for sure that with my mind I could get rid of the trails. So it works. So sometime in the future beyond that, I went down. This was in 2003. I took a mind development seminar in Phoenix, New Mexico. Phoenix, Arizona. Santa Fe, New Mexico. That's where it was at. And I noticed that when I got in there, I drove all the way from here, all the way to Santa Fe and to take this seminar. And I got there, the skies were kind of clear, but they were always complaining about trails, and it was clear. I said, what's the deal with the clear skies? And so the only thing I figured was, somehow when I was there, I got rid of the trails. Because my car was packed full of organite. And I had stuff in there. And so I took the mind development seminar, and then I stayed with this guy. He had an internet radio show. So I stayed on his property, which was south of Santa Fe, for, like 3-4 months. And it was in the desert, basically. And so I had a tent. I pitched a tent in the desert on the property. And the skies were just beautiful. Blue clouds every day, the really nice looking clouds. And then they just hammered the place. Hammered it. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of planes would just come and just sky, just the harp and everything. And no matter what I did, I could follow the trails, but you get this idea, you blow away so many trails and you get overwhelmed. So I thought, well, how can I solve this problem? Because it was a problem that I had to solve because I didn't have the means to have a cloudbuster on the property. So what I did was I climbed up this little mountain, and I was on this rock that kind of jutted out from it. And I said, well, I was just thinking about this. How can I get rid of this trails? So I thought, how can I boost? Because I thought it was just an energy boost. How can I boost this up? So this is how I formulated the idea of this volume. I said, well, I'm just centered here on this rock. What if I can get control of, 5 miles? So I said, well, the simplest geometry I can come up with is a sphere, because there's only 2 parameters you need for a sphere: a point, a origin, and a radius. So then I just mentally, my mind just envisioned in my mind what the sphere would look like. And then what I did was I scanned the environment with my mind. What's out there? And what, right around, all around me, what's up in the sky and underneath the ground, deep in the ground. And I just basically said, any door that's within this volume is going to immediately transmute to positive Oregon energy. It's incredible how well that worked. Just that simple thing. And what I noticed it has is that the more attention I put to it, the more effective it was. So if I went every day to that spot and I just thought about it and scanned the volume, it would blow the trails away in that volume. So then what happened was I noticed that the trails were still there, they were out in the distance. So I thought, well, I'm going to increase it to 50 miles. Because the desert's a big open area. So I said, I'll make it a 50-mile radius. So basically it's a 100-mile diameter. And what happened then was I noticed I had a reduction in effectiveness, but it was bigger. And every day it got stronger and stronger and stronger. But then there was a kind of a weird thing. Sometimes I would link into the volume and I would get a message. Like, there's an alert, I need help over there. So I thought, well, I could even tell the direction it was at. I wasn't really sure what it was. So what I would do is because the clouds were so nice, you could suck the clouds in and get the energy, and then I could redirect it in the volume to that location. That's what I do. I would just take the energy and just move it over there and channel it. And when I looked on the map, it was Los Alamos. Something at Los Alamos was a problem in the environment. And what I did is I just took the energy from the clouds and just redirected it. And I thought that was pretty cool because I was interacting with this volume. I would never have got that information any other way. Okay? So shortly after that, I went back to Erie, Pennsylvania. And I'm not really sure what that volume looks like today. It's probably still in existence. But, so what I want to do is convey to you now is basically you can repeat what I did. I'll disclose to you how I did it, and I'll tell you how what I think is going on. Okay. And there's a couple. What I think is going on is that these trails, I think, in order for to blow them away with your mind, it seems that there's a heavy etheric event or activity associated with the trails itself. Because when you blow it with your mind, you're doing it on an etheric level. That's basically where you're impacting it, in the etheric realm. And somehow you're now impacting the physical realm. So I'm going to give you some principles of which I've learned, which I've come across. And I should write these down on this easel here.
You want me to hold that for you, Robert, while you're doing it?
You can, yeah. Why don't you give it a...
Be an easel.
Be the easel. Be the easel. Here, come over here. So it's Here are some principles. One is energy goes where thought flows is made. Let me get my notes here.
Yes.
Basically, energy follows thought.
We'll share.
You know, the saying was, when I took that mind development class, the saying was, energy flows where attention goes. That's what I was trying to write there. Energy flows where attention goes, or energy follows thought. Thoughts are etheric. Your thoughts are in the etheric realm, they're not in the physical realm. It's an etheric event when you do thinking. And so when you attach, blow the trail away, remove the trail, basically that's, you're putting energy to that activity. Okay? There's another, another one is thoughts operate in the etheric. Another thing is that the etheric realm impresses upon the physical realm. And that's something that I've recently come across because of, you asked the question, and this is the answer I got. The answer I got was that the etheric realm impresses upon the physical. In a sense, in order for a leaf to grow, there had to be an etheric signature in place, and then the physical fills it in. That kind of a type thing.
Like a template, sort of.
Like a template, right. Yeah. And that's maybe what's going on with these chemtrails. In order for, there's some kind of a consciousness going on that's probably trying to manifest in the trail itself. And it's coming from the etheric realm and trying to somehow tap into the physical realm. That's what I think is happening. And by you looking at it, you disrupt that activity, that manifestation that's trying to occur. Okay, another one is that everything has a consciousness. Okay, everything has, a rock has consciousness. It may be very low level consciousness, but it does have a consciousness. And some consciousness have souls. And humans, most humans, have souls as well. And basically what that means is that you're just connected to a higher self. And that's what it means to have a soul, it's a connection. But most physical elements do not have souls. And what else? The power, the etheric power, is proportional to the number of people squared, roughly. Okay, so if you have, if you have like 2 people working on something, that's 4 times as powerful as only 1 person. If you have 4 people working on the same problem, that's 16 times as powerful as 1 person. So it's a square of the number of people that's associated with that.
So the group we've got here today is just going to...
So what happens is that, if you get a small group of people together doing a single activity, the power associated is immense. It's much better than just 1 person. So maybe that's what we're doing here today. Just learning how to do this and apply it, and we're all doing it together. The power is just, the synergy that's involved in it is going to be so great that hopefully it'll just overwhelm everything. Okay? So these are the basic principles that I figured that, is going on as associated with this etheric volume. So, any questions? Anybody have any questions?
A clarification. You mentioned when you did the sphere, I think it's probably obvious to everybody, but the sphere, the center point of the sphere was probably at or near ground level, so the sphere was also underground as well as overground, equidistance.
Right.
Yeah.
What I think is happening with the sphere is that, or any geometry, any etheric geometry you formulate, see, you've sort of, in a way, created it in your mind. and it's there. It's in the etheric realm. And what we're trying to do is to use that as an advocate or some kind of a booster to impinge on the physical realm. And that's why that principle came about, is that the etheric impinges on the physical.
Question,
Yes.
as far as continuation of all this, could one program in the intent that this be self-perpetuating?
Yeah. See, I'm not a very creative guy, you know. What you can do is, how you apply this is use your creativity.
I'm basically very lazy. I'd just rather do it once and have it go off on its own and keep going.
If you can figure out a way of doing that.
Well, yeah,
You
just
know.
tell it to.
Right. But, and you know, that's your creativity. You've figured out a way of dealing with that particular problem. See, I'm mostly a problem solver. That's my basic idea is I see a problem and how do I solve it? And, but I'm not creative.
Well, yeah,
I'm not a very
I
creative
see
person.
your solution and I think, whoa, that's cool. Okay, get busy and keep doing it.
Yeah. And, okay, so I'm just going over my notes here to see if anything else before I go through how to actually create the volume itself. Let's see. You know, I was thought about this too. You know, if people in the morning or whatever, when they looked up in the sky, most people don't look up in the sky. But if you look up in the sky and see, hey, what's that trail doing up in the sky? Get rid of that trail. If everybody did that, they wouldn't be there. There'd be so much attention against it that no matter what they did, theoretically, the population would just blow the trails away anyways. But most people don't do that. You know, there's a very few numbers. So I can think what we're trying to do now is just boost it by these techniques as best we can. And we have organized out in the environment, and we get to see how to unify all this stuff together. And let me give you another thought. Part of the story too is my brother, we built actually a Hooten class type cloudbuster, 5-gallon cloudbuster, and deployed it on my brother's property. And I tell you, that made a big difference. Big difference. But of course, you know, they overwhelm it over time. And so I went to the, you know, that they were able to get a handle on the sky. We would lose our own handle trying to keep it clear. And I was like, well, why is that? So I go to the cloudbuster and I just kind of tune into it, like, you know, how come the trails are sticking and the harp is sticking? And I got the impression back was, well, I'm working on the environment. I'm not working on the sky. I said, you know, work on the sky. And as soon as I did that, it cleared up. It's like I retasked it. It kind of was working on its own thing. So, you know, if you keep the attention to the chem buster and, you know, tell it what you want to do, it will actually do it. So I think that's part of, you know, part of the activity is these devices are fairly interactive. It's not a static device you just stick out there and just flip the switch and there it goes. Because it is an etheric thing that it's doing. It's not a physical thing. The chem buster is actually doing an etheric activity as opposed to a physical activity. Okay. So this is how you're going to create a volume, and this is how I do it. Now it doesn't necessarily mean the way how you would do it, but you know you can start with this. You can choose any geometry you want. I chose a sphere because it's a very simple way of describing it. There's only 2 parameters for a sphere: a radius and a point of origin. The point of origin is the center of the sphere. Rick, right, he chose to use a vertical cylinder. And so with a vertical cylinder, you actually need 4 parameters. With the cylinder, you know, you got the top here, you got this guy, and you got the bottom. Somewhere here, you got the land that you're standing on. It doesn't have to necessarily be in the middle, but your point of origin is in the center, you know, wherever you claim the point of origin is. So you've got this radius of the cylinder as one parameter, the point of origin is another parameter. You've got this height here height here is another parameter. So it's the height above the ground, the height into the ground, and the radius. 5-mile radius or whatever you want to choose. And that requires 4 parameters to do a cylinder. So it's a little bit more complicated to describe. So, you can choose whatever you want. If you wanted to have an arbitrary geometry, you can do that. I know it's like sometimes I have the desire, I have a sphere, it's just basically a big circle on the ground, but I would want to include that little area over there. But you can do that. I also want to include that little area over there in the volume. So it's not a total sphere, it's kind of a sphere with a little bump in it. You can do that.
It's like an amoeba. It could
Yeah. And, or you can say that I want to go on a map, I want to outline this city or this county, and that's what I want the perimeter to look like. You can do that as well. It's just it's more difficult to describe. So I looked for simplicity as opposed to complexity. But you get as complex as you want. The thing is somehow you have to describe it too. When in the creation phase, you have to somehow describe it properly so that it's understood in the etheric realm. Okay? So choose whatever geometry you want. Now the point of origin, what I've always used at a point of origin is some prominent feature. A nice looking rock. When I was in the desert, this rock was beautiful. I was sitting on it and it was jutted out of this mountain here. And I said, well, this is my point of origin. Since then, I've always used them. The one in Pasadena uses a really prominent fountain. It's in a prominent location on the Caltech property, and there's a fountain, and that's what I chose as a point of origin. It's a really nice looking thing. It's easy to recall in my mind, and it probably has a fairly good consciousness associated with it. Rick uses a cloudbuster in his yard, right? He's using a cloudbuster, so you can use your cloudbuster as a point of origin. Just start. The point of origin is at this cloudbuster. That's where it is at.
I have
So-
a question. Can I ask you? When the planes are spraying, what altitude are they at, and what do you do to encompass your height? Is
Well,
it up until eternity, or what?
Well, what happens is I chose a sphere, a 5-mile radius sphere. So a 5-mile radius is about 30,000 feet, roughly.
Okay.
5 times 50.
So that encompasses.
So, and that's a problem because remember I was in the desert. I had chose a 5-mile or 10-mile radius. I can't remember which one it was. And it wasn't big enough because you could still see all the crap out there, right? And my solution at the time was, I'll just make it bigger. But then you've got so much more volume. Because see, in a sphere, you double the radius. That's 8 times more volume you have to handle. It's a cube of the increase in the radius. So it's so I've tried. Okay, so the thing is, how can I use my current volume and extend it kind of artificially? So I've come up with ways of doing that, and I'll disclose that after I show you how to actually create the volume. Okay. So what I do then is I get the point of origin, and you're kind of in a declaration phase. When you're declaring this, you're in the mindset of you're declaring this. I'm declaring this to be a point of origin. I'm declaring a volume of this particular shape. The shape I want to use is a sphere. The radius of the sphere is so many miles, 5 miles, 10 miles, whatever. And it's probably best to give it a name, so you have a way of referencing it. That's it. I'm declaring that there's a point of origin here of this volume that I'm creating. The shape of this thing is whatever you wanted to shape it. Then you have to tell the parameters that you want. I just chose a sphere, so the only parameter I have is a radius. So it's a radius around, it's a radius up in the sky, a radius in the ground. It's a sphere, it's a globe. If it's a cylinder, you've got more parameters to specify. The radius of the cylinder, the height from the ground up into the sky is one other parameter. The one, how deep into the ground you want to go is the third parameter, and the point of origin is the fourth parameter. And so you have to declare that, and you have to be very explicit, because they may not really know what you're trying to say. So you do 2 things. You say it in words, you say it in your mind, and you picture it, because it's the pictures that they pick up on, but they somehow can get an understanding of what you're trying to say verbally. So what I do then is I envision the outside perimeter of this sphere. You just envision it, what does it look like? It looks like a shell, as it goes into the ground, it goes up into the sky, and I can kind of see it around me. And, it's forming. It's because you're creating this thing in your mind. You're creating it, but you're actually creating an etheric volume. Then what I do is that, don't forget to give it a name. They like names. And it's nice to reference it,
I'm sorry, are you referencing the point, or you're referencing the sphere or the volume that you're creating?
the volume.
Okay,
The point of origin is just a
okay.
way of anchoring it to some physical location. So the point of origin really is an anchor. Because in the etheric realm, there is no really physicalness, but you're anchoring it. And I'm not sure what's going on. See, I think what's happening is that when you create this, you actually created a consciousness in a way. Entities have consciousnesses. Even in the etheric realm, they have a consciousness. And you now can interact with that consciousness. And I'm not sure if you're extending the consciousness of the item that's in the point of origin, or you're creating a new one and overlaying it on top of that. I'm not really sure what's happening. That's a question I'm trying to answer right now. But anyways, you have a consciousness. You are now able to interact with this sphere through its consciousness, and you created it in your mind. And if you have other people, you can have multiple people with you creating this thing. Remember, the more people involved, the more powerful it has. The only thing I would recommend is that if you have a multitude of people, only one person is the primary, and all the other ones are secondaries. The primary is the guy or the person that's actually creating it, and the one who's going to program it. Okay? And because you have to put safeguards in such that it's programmed, but it can only be programmed by you. You don't want anybody overriding your program. And then the secondaries are support. People who actually think along with you as you're describing this volume verbally, and they're thinking along with you, and their input is being reinforced in it. They're part of the synergy of this volume. And they're part of the power of powering it as well. Okay, so we have visualized the perimeter of this particular geometry that you want to overlay. And then what I do is I scan 3 areas. I scan the terrain, or the terrain. I scan the sky, and then I scan underground. So what I do is I just say I'm going to point north as a reference, and I'm just going to close my eyes, and I'm just going to scan.